A 707 jet is the newest target of hijackers, an incredible fiction-like attempt at piracy.
I think in a lot of ways the best way to conceive of this as an epidemic, and that the behavior was a virus. My name is I Koerner. I'm the author of The Skies Belong to Us, Love and Terror in the Golden Age of Hijacking. It was primarily at the beginning people who wanted to escape to Cuba. All they were interested in was getting passage to Havana, where a lot of them thought they would be greeted as heroes. Instead, most of them ended up in prison in Cuba. Fidel Castro was not very excited to see them come.
Back in Miami after their unexpected side trip from Houston to Havana are crew and passengers of the fourth hijack incident involving a U.S. airliner.
Towards the late 60s, you have people starting to go to different destinations other than Cuba. Italy, the Bahamas, Algeria, and finally you had people asking for money at the very tail end of the epidemic.
Anti-war demonstrators protest U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War.
It was a time when people kind of embraced outlaws because there was so much distrust of the establishment. The idealism of the 60s had not managed to stop the Vietnam War. You had a civil rights movement that had been decimated by assassinations, a lot of rage floating around, and this was a way for people to act out. And of course, perhaps above all, there was really very little security at airports by the airlines. It was very easy to do this. Roger Holder was a Vietnam veteran. Upon his return to the United States, had gone AWOL. He encounters this 20-year-old woman, Kathy Kirko, who was working in a massage parlor. And the two of them concoct this rather daft plan to hijack a plane, exchange the passengers for the imprisoned black radical Angela Davis, and get a large amount of ransom money. Fly Davis and the money to North Vietnam, where they would drop off Davis, and then fly to Australia, where they hoped to homestead in the outback. They ran into problems immediately. First flight they wanted to hijack, they actually paid for their ticket with a bounced check, so they were not allowed to board the flight. Angela Davis refused to go with them. She wanted nothing to do with these people. Roger Holder changes his mind on a whim and decides he doesn't want to go to North Vietnam anymore, he wants to go to Algeria. Well, they actually managed to make it to Algiers, which at that time was a very anti-American regime, and they were granted a political asylum there, and actually spent some time there living with a commune of exiled Black Panthers.
Welcome aboard.
The airlines had a policy of total compliance. The way they saw it, hijackers did not want to cause mass destruction. They just wanted to negotiate. So the airlines wanted the passengers to be safe, and they wanted to get the airplanes back intact. So they instructed their pilots and flight crews to do everything the hijackers asked. It was really a financial calculation. First of all, they were pretty scared that if they put in metal detectors at every airport and forced every single passenger to walk through a detector and have their baggage screened, that people would choose to drive instead of fly.
Passengers who travel by air a great deal might build up a dangerous accumulation of radiation if they're checked before every departure.
Second of all, they kind of ran the math, and they said, well, this will cost us untold millions to buy all the security equipment and hire the personnel to operate it. We can either pay that, or we can pay the relatively insignificant sum associated with getting our planes hijacked 20 to 40 times a year. Throughout 1972, you had these hijackings growing more bizarre, more audacious, and more violent. You had a lot of deaths associated with this, often through FBI firefights. And then in November 1972, you had an incident with a Southern Airways flight in Alabama where 3 hijackers threatened to crash the plane into a nuclear reactor in Tennessee unless they were given $10 million. And that was really the tipping point, at which point the airlines realized that the liabilities and risks associated with this were too severe to ignore.